It is Wednesday, the 26th of October, 2024 at Protestia Studios, and this is an intelligence briefing coming to you from Protestia.com, where you can go to find the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news, such as the articles we're about to walk through on this intelligence briefing. Sign up for our insurgency email blast and support us over at patreon.com/Protestia. $5.95 a month to start. There are other levels of support. But at all levels, you will get ad-free browsing on the website, and send us a message once you get subscribed over at Patreon to sign up for the Insurgency email blast for the full 6 days for no additional charge. Let's get into the headlines. First headline at Protestia: fact check. Is Trump pro-choice? Not by a long shot. There an article over at Protestia right now explaining the differences between Trump's abortion policies and Kamala Harris's abortion policies, and why there's really no moral equivalent, even as much as we as believers know that there are deficiencies and problems and objectionable things. I think that's probably putting it lightly about Trump's abortion policies. But really just it walks you through a lot of the explanation about where Trump is bad, where Trump is good, and how there's really not a comparison, and how he really doesn't fit the definition of pro-choice, at least as we use it in the standard political conversation in this country. I would commend you to the article. I think that you should read it and decide for yourself. And yeah, it's over at Protestia.com. Let's move on. Next headline at Protestia: Andy Stanley's church is sending children to all LGBTQ therapists, and we profile one of the gender fluid counselors over at Protestia.com. You can see a picture of it to the right on the screen here. For years, North Point Community Church, led by Andy Stanley, has been partnering with and promoting affirming LGBTQ plus organizations where desperate parents come to see them for help with their struggling gay children, all done through the Parent Connect ministry. And one of the places that apparently the church connects them with is to people like Britt Kusero, I believe how it's pronounced. According to her profile, she is a she/they who identifies as queer, lesbian, and gender fluid, and charges a mere $160 an hour, licensed marriage and family therapist with specialization in LGBTQ plus affirmative therapy. Yeah, this is one of the places that you can go get connected through North Point Community Church and some of their LGBTQ affirming organizations that they are affiliated with. Read more about this over at Protestia.com. Next headline over at Protestia: Heaven is for Real author Todd Burpo shares update on son 14 years after he quote-unquote visited heaven. This is the, it's I guess it's been a thing for a long time. It's kind of gone away. But back about 10, 15 years ago, the so-called heaven tourism industry was kind of a big thing. You had books by talking about Alex Malarkey, a kid going to heaven. This one written by Todd Burpo about his son Colton Burpo going to heaven. Guys like Don, not John, Don Piper, right? I think he wrote 9 years in heaven, talking about how he visited heaven. You have charismatic Looney Tunes like Jesse Duplantis, who've claimed they visited heaven. This was kind of a big thing back then, and you had groups like SBC's Lifeway selling these books, even when they were told by guys like Justin Peters, hey, Alex Malarkey has the 6-year-old that said he went to heaven, has said he made all of that up. You're still selling the books. And Tom Rainer and Lifeway kept selling the books for a long time before finally pulling them off the shelves, in no small part due to the outcry brought about by Pulpit and Pen at that time, reporting on the issue and putting pressure on them and really getting a groundswell effort to pressure Lifeway to quit selling books based off of blasphemous lies like Alex Malarkey supposedly going to heaven. But we're 14 years after supposedly Colton Burpo visited heaven. There was a movie made about it, the whole 9 yards. Some of you remember it was a major motion picture called Heaven is for Real, which detailed 3-year-old, that's right, what a 3-year-old says they saw in heaven. If I remember correctly, Colton had his appendix removed or something like that. Was on the operating table, and then when he gained consciousness, started making up stuff about heaven. which his dad still claims is real. I guess Colton would be about a teenager at this point, 17, 18 years old, maybe that kind of a range. And we have Todd Burpo telling the Gospel Herald, how writing this super true book changed him, saying, in some ways, I went from being unknown by most people, if you don't live in a town of 2,000 people and preach there for 20 years if you're seeking attention. And so Heaven is for Real thrust us into the spotlight we never anticipated. We knew God wanted us to write the book, but we never saw the success of the book coming. That surprised us. Yet at the same time, we said, God, this is your plan, and we're going to make the best of it. And Burpo responds to skeptics who doubt his son's story, saying, we always will have skeptics. There's no way to get around that. Colton's response is the best. I remember when he was 12. He was asked by someone who was interviewing him about Stephen Hawking's book, There Is No Heaven. This person on a major news channel said, Colton, what do you have to say about that? He doesn't agree with you. My 12-year-old son talking about a well-known scientist, he said he can believe what he wants to, but it doesn't change what I saw. I know what I saw, and that's where we stand. Of course, the problem with the book Heaven is for Real, like all the heavenly tourism stuff, is they contradict things that are directly taught in Scripture. But it appears that Todd Burpo is holding to the malarkey of Colton's book, even though Alex Malarkey, the 6-year-old, pulled his story after revealing that he made the whole thing up. You can read more about this over at protestia.com. Next headline at Protestia: Is Jesus King? Is Jesus is King, a Nazi slogan? Some Christians seem to think so. The Babylon Bee has come a long way since it started. Believe it or not long after its launch, it had at least one guest post by Karen Swallow Prior and took pot shots at discernment blogs. But since its start in 2016, the website's fake news you can trust has only gotten funnier and thankfully more religiously and politically conservative. Obviously, we appreciate their work. This made some scratch their heads at the perplexing dust-up on X when Babylon Bee managing editor Joel Berry claimed that the expression Christ is King is an overture to Nazi ideology earlier this week. What's the joke? Or better yet, where's the punchline? This is the tweet Joel had put up saying, because the specific phrase Christ is King was being used as a Nazi rallying cry at the time, taking Jesus' name in vain, many at the time wisely altered the phrase to Jesus is Lord to avoid any association with Jew hatred. You know this, and yet continue to gaslight about it. He's responding or retweeting Orrin McIntyre, saying respectable conservatives who lost their minds over people saying Christ is King are now attacking Harris for rejecting those who say Jesus is Lord. The particulars of this recent debate over the phrase Christ is King stems from Kamala Harris responding, "You're at the wrong rally," to hecklers who shouted at her the phrase Christ is King. Some disagreement exists whether Kamala was responding to the particular phrase or just to hecklers in general, with the group Evangelicals for Harris predictably denying it had anything to do with religion. According to LifeSite News, the video shows students shouting both the phrase Jesus is Lord and also the aforementioned Christ is King. As you can see above, Evangelicals for Harris, you can see it over here, actually quoted the line Jesus is Lord and not Christ is King when they, looks like they retweeted Elon Musk saying Kamala hates Christians and talking about people yelling Jesus is Lord. Conservatives took to X to capitalize on the show of instinctual disgust Kamala Harris had toward what seemed to be an orthodox statement of faith. However, liberals claimed she only bristled at the heckling. There are some conservatives who seem to side, to some small extent, with Kamala Harris, including managing editor Joel Berry. The reason he claims is that the expression was used by Nazis and in particular is used to show contempt for Jews. There is certainly something to this controversy, and Berry isn't imagining it. Conservative influencer Candace Owens parted ways with Daily Wire personality and Jew Ben Shapiro with the tweet, Christ is King. Slate magazine referred to the expression as, quote, an aggressive trolling of Jews. The tiff between the two personalities stemmed from Owens' criticism of the state of Israel for alleged war crimes against the Palestinian people, which Ben Shapiro and a good many Americans consider kosher in light of Hamas's attack on Israeli civilians on October 7, 2023. Candace Owens is an avid Roman Catholic and seen associating with the Christian nationalist movement, which this publication does not intend to parse at this time. Certainly Christian nationalists like Tradcath, Nick Fuentes exhibit what some characterize as anti-Semitic behavior or language. In short, Kamala Harris told hecklers, shouting multiple phrases, including Christ is King and Jesus is Lord, that they were at the wrong rally. Liberals immediately claimed she was referring to the act of heckling and not their exaltation of Christ, but some conservatives, opposed to Christian nationalism, claimed her rebuke was warranted because the phrase Christ is King has anti-Semitic undertones. Now, who is correct about this? You should go to read this article to read whether or not the Nazi slogan "Christ is King" was anything other than Jew trolling at the time. It pretty much wasn't. Nazi ideology, certainly Hitler's beliefs and religious convictions and ideology and things, were much more akin to some weird version of Nordic, Viking kind of mythology, Valhalla, and like the Odinist religion of Norse mythology instead of actual Christianity. But you could read more about that over in the article at protestia.com. We're moving on. Next headline at Protestia: more than 50% of practicing Christians admit they use pornography, but do they actually? Pornography use among practicing Christians continues to rise, according to a new Barna report, Beyond the Porn Phenomenon, which is produced in partnership with Pure Desire Ministries, suggesting that more than half of practicing Christians consume porn on a regular basis. What's even worse is that a large percentage of people are comfortable with the practice. This is a screenshot from the Barna poll here, saying how often you use porn, and splitting the respondents between practicing Christians, non-practicing Christians, and non-Christians. Obviously, the use going up as the scale moves down from practicing Christians to non-Christians at all. But we would take issue, let me continue to read here a little bit. Porn use among pastors has also risen since Barna last ran a similar survey in 2015, with 1 in 5 pastors presently reporting that they struggle with porn addiction. 67% reporting they've struggled with porn use in the past, compared to 57% reporting 9 years ago. However, the last few points of the survey indicate some definitional problems. Barna defines practicing Christians as people who, quote, identify with a Christian denomination, attend a worship service at least once a month, and say their faith is very important in their life. This could mean anyone from the 28-year-old sanctified mom of 4 who faithfully attends the small Baptist church with her husband and hosts the Wednesday evening prayer night, or it could be some blue-haired lesbian attending the local ECLA church who is fomenting with joy because she just got tasked to design the float for the church's Pride Parade. You can instantly write off the 49% of quote-unquote Christians who are comfortable with their porn use as unsaved pagans, and the same with the 32% of folks who said porn use is either a good thing for society or is morally neutral. This would make every stat listed in the article more or less useless for actually figuring out what's going on. Let's move on. Next headline at protestia.com. Demented prophetess claims Trump was texting her these things 20 minutes before he was shot. It's been a little while since we've had a Cat Kerr article. Let's just watch and see what she has to say here.
So this Trump I'm wearing was made by Trump for me. 20 minutes before he was shot, he texted me from the platform as one of the prophets he trusts. Is there anything else I need to know to share with the people? He meant from God. I just said, well, God has something to say. What does he want to say? He said to you, no matter what happens this night, do not be afraid. Fear not, for I have your back. And you will not die. These are the very words I gave
like a fortune cookie
from God. So never surrender. Never back up. Never quit going forward, because you will be successful for what you want to do, because I'm the one who put you there, anointed you, appointed you.
All right, let's I think that's enough of that. That's our favorite pink-haired charismatic prophetess, Cat Kerr. And when she isn't revealing how to access the body parts room of heaven, we got the links. Go to the article, you can see it. Sharing how heaven smells like pumpkin pie and where cows drive around on tractors, revealing that everyone new to heaven is greeted by talking, singing, dancing squirrels, insisting that angels have pet sharks and dinosaurs in heaven that accompany them on missions, claiming she has a picture of thousands of lion-faced angels frog-marching chained demons across the sky. Okay, the list goes on and on and on. She's apparently getting texts from Trump while he's at a rally. Trump is texting her before he goes on stage to speak at a Pennsylvania rally. He's texting Cat Kerr, according to her. You can read more about that over at protestia.com, but we're going to move on. Next headline, 64-year-old church secretary faces 280 years in prison for embezzling tithes and offerings. A 64-year-old church secretary was just found guilty on 14 counts of embezzlement after being accused of stealing at least $670,000 from the house of worship she attended for over 2 decades. According to a statement from the Louisa County Sheriff's Office, in early 2023, the church attempted to make a donation to another local church for a new building. However, when the church board could not reach Mrs. Ragland, who was traveling, to get a letter from their bank about available funds, they reached out directly to the bank. The bank told the church that the church did not have enough money for the donation in their bank account. The board immediately knew something was wrong. The discovery prompted the church to obtain and examine their financial records, which were turned over to the Louisa County Sheriff's Office for further investigation. The investigation revealed that in addition to taking funds from the church's bank account, Ragland deposited congregation members' tithings to the church via Cash App in her personal bank account for several years. She is set to be sentenced for this on January 27th, 2025, where she faces up to 280 years in prison. I assume that that's by stacking all of the charges one on top of the other. We'll see what happens. Last headline for this intelligence briefing: United Church of Christ and pastors hold blessing ceremony for Planned Parenthood, because why wouldn't they? Revealing themselves to be little more than little Christ-hating pagans and paganettes, a delegate of the United Church of Christ and pastors took time away from attending the denomination's General Synod to travel to a Milwaukee Planned Parenthood clinic following Sunday's worship session. Here they joined staff and delegates to hold a service of blessing and solidarity for the abortuary, highlighting the devilish denomination's longstanding history of promoting, defending, and entrenching the murder of babies. We have a list over here in our article of, bad stuff about the United Church of Christ. And we catalog that kind of stuff. As you can see, this event took place in 2019, so we are reporting a few years late, but it is something that you should be aware of. This service held in support of Planned Parenthood. You could read more about it over at protestia.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Intelligence Briefing for Wednesday, the 23rd of October, 2024. Stay tuned to protestia.com for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. We'll see you again next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.